So today, welcome to u-nite, Unity Temple's weekly interspiritual service. I'm Reverend Nhien, and I'm here with one of u-nite's co-founders, Victor. He helped to co-found this service, 3 years ago. So this is a very exciting day to kind of come and reunite, even as we prepare to close before the summer break happens. So we're about to enter an 8-week period where u-nite, this service, will not be happening, but instead we're going to go out into the community. Folks will lead all sorts of events, service opportunities, and social opportunities out in the community. I'll share a little bit more about that at the very end of today's service, but needless to say, it's a very special one. The focus of today is love and bliss. As I told you last week, I will be talking a lot less today, and we will actually be engaging in a practice. So this is an interspiritual service. And what that means for us is that while unity is both historically and culturally, grounded in the teachings of Jesus, teachings such as unconditional love and grace, as opposed to the teachings about Jesus, we here actively embrace the practices and principles from the world's religious and spiritual traditions, understanding that all of these ancient wisdom traditions has something to gift to us. The other piece to interspirituality is that our focus is not on dogma or theology. It's not about getting everyone together to see if we all agree on the same thing. Rather, we come together for a shared experience. Ideally, an experience of love, bliss, unity, and oneness. And to that end, even as we've been gearing up by going through this recent 6-week series on the book, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, a book designed to support our awakening, today I feel like is a good day for us to sort of celebrate and be in the energy of love and bliss, which is what we here in Unity believe is our divine inheritance, is our true nature, is the nature of spirit, which is the nature of each and every one of us and every single thing in the world. And so today, I'll share just a bit to open us into the possibility of relaxing into that infinite presence of love and of bliss that is always available for us. And if we just open our hearts and we join together in a way that supports each other, we could take this time together to rest and relax and float in that presence together. So, one of the most renowned Sufi masters, Rumi, who is best known for his sacred poetry, was also a teacher. And he would share stories that would illustrate these spiritual truths. In one of these stories, he tells the tale of a naked man who's running away from this swarm of bees that's after him and wanting to sting and attack him. So he's running, and he finally jumps into the ocean. And for a few seconds, he feels safe and protected in the ocean, but he's holding his breath. And so naturally, he fears that if he holds his breath for too long, he will pass out and die, right? So every few seconds, he reaches up out of the water again to gasp for air. And when he does, however, the bees are still there, and they're swarming, and they're attacking him. So he gasps for air, is exposed to the bees, and naturally, in order to avoid being stung, dives back down, takes a breath, and goes back in. Goes back up again, gets stung, goes back down into the water. So now Rumi shares that this story illustrates the way in which the bees can represent the way that we turn our remembrance to worldly matters, that which is up and out there. And diving into the ocean is a way that we turn our remembrance to God, to spirit, to the infinite. So up there and back there. And for most of us, there is a way in which we turn our attention toward the world in hopes that we will experience love, bliss, joy, happiness. But repeatedly, when we turn to the world, we get stung. We get stung in many ways. Even when the people in our lives are cool and these are the people we want, we get stung by the fact that we lose them, that people leave us. They either physically leave us, separate from us, or they pass away. So even that which is good can sting us. We get stung in that people betray us, they reject us, they judge us. We get stung in that our own bodies can often feel like they're betraying us. Now, I remember when I had chronic pain for like 3 years running during seminary, and I'd have to go home and nap for like 3 hours at a time. What is going on? It feels like my body is betraying me and the path of life that I want. You know, to feel betrayed by your own being. And nature, so many of us love nature. I love going out and hiking in nature. You know, but recently we had a tornado warning here at Unity Temple. You know, you think about like, oh, nature's wonderful. And it feels like sometimes nature, it's wonderful until it's catastrophic. It's wonderful until it hurts our houses and the people we love. And so in the world, we find this experience of continually being stung as we reach out, as we gasp for air in the way that we normally live, to breathe the oxygen that we normally live. Rumi teaches in this example, he says that the pure in heart do not only seek the ocean, but they seek to get lost in the ocean. They seek to die in the ocean. They seek to become part of the ocean. He says, the pure in heart do not just seek out the ocean. And how many of us, I know for me early on in my spiritual path in particular, but certainly even now, there's I'll go about my life and I'm going to run my life. God's over here, kind of that innate wisdom, inner wisdom is over here. I'm going to run my life until tragedy hits, until I suffer, until things aren't what I want, and then I go to prayer. And then I dive in, and then I go taste a little bit, I jump in the ocean for a bit until what? I'm afraid of dying. Yet in every wisdom tradition, there is this profound invitation. When you jump in the ocean, stay there. When you leave your sense and remembrance of the world as the source of your good and remember God, even and especially perhaps when it feels like you're dying, stay there. And this is what Jesus' death and rebirth metaphorically represents. But this is what the classic transformation example of the butterfly, the caterpillar, and the butterfly metaphorically represents. It's sort of what is over there is so unknown and foreign to us. We have to die to what is known, what is seen, what is visible. But what happens instead? We seek the solace of spirit. And then when we're afraid we're actually going to die, like who we are gets rocked so hard that we don't know who we are anymore. We get disoriented in that way. Then we scramble for air and we go back into the world only to get stung over and over again. And so in this past 6-week journey, the invitation, in fact, the invitation of a u-nite service in general, is an invitation to a remembrance that it is truly in our dying that we find infinite life. And if we could only join together and support each other in trusting that, no, it's not really when you get that job. It's not really when that person operates like you want in your relationship that you're going to find this bliss and this happiness. It's only when you're willing to release and let go of the clamoring up for all of those things, and let go to the point where your old system and your old habit patterns for striving end up getting lost in the ocean, if you will, to where you don't even know who you are for a while, and you kind of sit in the darkness of being. You know, it's the darkness of the acorn that is buried that can become the oak tree, right? You know, the acorn has no idea the grandeur of what it can be. So it clings and doesn't want to go underground, right? It's like to be like that versus to submit ourselves by letting go of our strategies for bliss, love, and happiness in order to surrender to what is real, what is true. And we do that, as we shared in these past weeks, by simply submitting and not resisting to what is right in front of us. You know, to say, you know, this experience that feels like torment, that feels like shattering, I can welcome it, I can surrender to it, I can be with it. And in that being with, I open myself up to reality as it truly is. There is a beautiful poem by Rumi. You think you are alive because you breathe air? Shame on you. That you are alive in such a limited way. Don't be without love, so you won't feel dead. Die in love and stay alive forever. Die in love and stay alive forever. And so the litmus test, a teacher, Anthony DeMello, on The Way to Love, writes that the litmus test for this dying to love is not making anything special. You know, the ways that we cling to individuals in our lives and say, oh, because I have this special relationship, that's love. Or because I have this special position in my life, that's bliss. But to release all that, oftentimes we fear, we're like, oh no, I need this in order to be happy. I need my home to be this certain way in order to be happy. That each of these constraints, when we surrender that need, when we surrender the compulsion to make this that way, we open up to a death of our old self and a being reborn into a way of being where more and more love is everywhere present. In everyone. Beauty is everywhere in our lives because our eyes are open and we can see more clearly the reality that is already there. And the litmus test is that we who think that our greatest love is to love someone specially or to be loved specially by our family members, by our friends, by our partners, but instead releasing that clinging and instead opening up to a way in which the whole universe, the ocean, holds us. We are it. Everything within it feels more beautiful. In the path to this, we're talking about love and bliss today. The path to this is simply to open each moment to saying, if I believe what I say, which is that God or spirit or reality, the essence of life is benevolent, is good, is love, then in every moment, what seems to not be it is not a result of not having love, but of my not seeing it. And a classic example I have in my own life is when I had first hit bottom in my life and started my conscious spiritual journey and started a 12-step program of recovery. I remember profoundly this day in which I had a slip, like a relapse in program. And I remember this moment where inside myself I felt like, oh my God, God is going to punish me, right? And that I'm doomed and I'm damned. And you have this well of shame and guilt that like floods over you. And I wasn't sure what to do or how to proceed. I had been so good in my recovery. And all I wanted to do is curl up in my bed, you know, and like sort of hide from the world, as if we could hide from all that. It's like to cover up your shame, if you will, almost symbolically, like Adam and Eve putting on clothes to hide. And instead of hiding, I remember I had a moment that felt like grace that said, get up, go out. And funny thing is, I actually went to the gym, and I went on the Stairmaster and I read A Course in Miracles. But that was my way of like not hiding, not being small, not cowering for this sense of shame within me. And I went to the gym and I flipped open the book, and it opened to the pages, God does not forgive. Oh crap, God does not forgive was the first line. God does not forgive because God never condemned. It is we who condemn. Really? Is it possible that this infinite love is always available to me, but I have to say yes to it? I have to open my heart to it. It's already there. I just don't see it. I don't see it because I'm clinging to ideas about who I need to be in order to deserve that love, right? And that was a really profound and extreme example that I can feel viscerally in my bones today. But each and every day I have this choice point. Each and every day I get to decide, you know, yesterday I had potato chips for dinner. You know, like I really had this moment of like, oh, that sucked. And, you know, I was feeling stressed and I ate very unhealthily. And I had this moment, just these little ways in which it may feel small, but it's in each of these little decisions in our everyday lives that we're like, am I okay with myself? Am I going to play God and punish myself for doing something wrong? You know, I had an interaction with a friend also yesterday where I left that feeling like, oh, should I have said that? You know, and there's this part of me that like can ruminate over. And it's like, okay, well, I don't deserve happiness anymore. I mean, I go to these extremes of like, oh, well, I can't have a good relationship because that sucked, right? Like, and we play God when we do that. We say, you need to be punished. Whenever we withhold ourselves from the stream of love, that's what we're actually doing. We're saying, oh, it's all here, but I'll decide whether I deserve it or not. And maybe part of it is the fear that if I decided otherwise, that spirit, that love wouldn't be there. And that's the leap of faith that we all take when we decide to let go of our own ideas each and every day. Oh, you know, did my talk go well? Did my class go well? Well, most people thought it did, but oh, this person, I'm not so sure. They didn't say anything. They didn't say anything positive. And I could ruminate on that, right? What are the things and what are the ways in which we bar ourselves from that experience of love? I know each of us can do it in a very different way. For some of us, there's a connection to our security as our well-being, that in a way love is security and certainty. And so when we face change, there is this sort of sense almost of being abandoned by God. You know, like in the midst of change, there's a sense of feeling so alone. You know, but in that, what often happens is then, if I'm alone, well, I better watch out for myself, and I better really think only about my own well-being. And so I get really preoccupied with my self-preservation. And in that, what am I doing? I'm actually doing the opposite of falling into the ocean, right? Where where I can float, where my well-being lies, I stay apart from that. And the ways in which we feel we need to strive on our own, if each of us even just took one thing that happens this week, one moment where we think, oh, I got to work harder in this. I have to apply my strategy even more forcefully in this, in getting this person to change their mind, in getting my boss to give me a raise, you know, in making sure the doctors all cooperate with me. And if instead of doing that, I chose to loosen sort of that clinging mentality, and I opened my heart and let the fear and anxiety of being and feeling apart from oneness rise within me. If I let myself feel that and let it move through me so that I don't act from it, so that I don't choose from that belief in separation, but let the feelings move through my body, and then wait and allow the action to arise. What would my life be like? It might be a flow with divinity itself, a feeling the way that I am so immersed in the ocean, I am part of it, and I float within it, and it holds me, and it supports me. If we could only do that. So the invitation to doing that, as we reflect on what is God? Michael Singer, in his book, The Untethered Soul, concludes the book with this beautiful chapter reminding us about the loving eyes of God, which is a personification, but sometimes these metaphors can be helpful. And he says, what is God most like? God is most like the sun. God is most like the sun. Our relationship to God is most like the sun, he says. And how is that? Well, the sun shines perpetually, even if you close your eyes. You can close your eyes and be like, it's so dark in here. You can turn away, face away, and look for the shadow and go, oh, it's shadowed, this life. But the beauty of God being like the sun is the moment you open your eyes and look at it, it's there, right? The sun isn't like, hey, you haven't appreciated me shining all this while. You've turned your back on my givingness as the sun, right? And why does it not do that? Because it's the sun's nature to shine. It can't help it. That's what we mean. We're not personifying God, saying God chooses to love us or not. It's love's nature to love. It's the sun's nature to shine. It will shine whether or not you're looking at it. And spirit will love, and life will love whether or not you are open to it. And the beauty of that is the moment we open to it. When I say I will not condemn myself anymore, when I say I deserve love, when I say I deserve prosperity and abundance, when I say I deserve to feel spirit as the ground of my being, when I say all that and I open my heart to the possibility of something that I can only imagine because it hasn't been lived out yet in my experiential life, then all I experience is the sun shining. And many of you are already familiar. Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. What happens with the love like that? It lights the whole sky, says the Sufi poet Hafiz. You owe me. Could you imagine? But yet how do we live as if this were true? Some of us do it by applying it to other people. And, as taught in the Bible, it's like the measure by which we judge is the measure by which we are judged. And the idea is that if we hold that love is conditional, and if we condition our love to others on their being well-behaved, then we're actually applying that same universal law to ourselves. And so when we stop doing it to others, we stop doing it to ourselves. When we stop doing it to ourselves, we stop doing it to others, and we open. And so that's the invitation of today. But rather than keep it all sort of at a head level, what I'm going to invite us to do is to open our hearts. And I'm going to share just a really brief Enneagram lesson from Christopher Hewitt's The Sacred Enneagram. He outlines what each Enneagram type needs to do. And even if you don't know the Enneagram, consider these archetypal patterns for the ways in which we can approach surrendering to the ocean. So there is a certain group that needs to consent to divine love. So 2s on the Enneagram, no longer trying to earn love by giving to get. 5, no longer trying to figure it out. What does love mean before you will experience it? 8, no longer trying to resist it by being in control of everything in their lives. There are types that need to engage divine love. 3s, making love rather than outer success the source of your affirmation and your worth. 6s, need to allow, to invite love in, to silence your fears. 9s, letting love bring an inner grounded peace. There are types that need to rest in divine love. Type 1, which is mine, receiving love rather than some moral standard as the ultimate source of your innate goodness. 4s, seeing your precious belovedness in love, your own belovedness, your specialness in that. And finally, 7s, allowing rest to be your true freedom, the gift that it was always meant to be. And so each of us, it's important when we talk about opening to love, that understanding our own psychology helps us to understand our approach to it, what we need. And so I want to invite us into a time of chanting led by Victor now. And the reason for this is this: the importance of repetition to take away from like old ways of being. When I was at my grandfather's funeral, we had a Buddhist service, and I was struck by what we did for about 5 hours all day long, like just throughout the day. We knelt and we chanted, and we knelt and we chanted. We got up, we knelt and we chanted. And my mom explained this, that, we say yes, like we say yes to letting him go, and then we change our minds. Chanting is a way we keep plodding forward. Chanting and the rhythm of chanting, I invite you to use that to stay on track, to make this decision, to open more fully to the spaciousness of the possibility that you are already beloved, that the light already shines upon you, and you just need to open. And sometimes we open a little, we close, we open. And chanting, I would invite you, when people say sing your heart out, I would invite you instead to chant your heart open. The light in me beholds the light in you. Namaste.
Namaste.